I'm using the computer as a camera.
Yeah.
I
think we're on. Hello.
Hello, are we live?
Yeah,
Been
exactly.
yattering away. I've got my COVID hair in control. We're all back together, and the sun's been shining, so that's always got to be good, hasn't it? We're the infant feeding team at the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford. It is Thursday at 2:30. We're going to give you an hour session on infant feeding. So for those that know about us, then you can just switch off for a moment while I go on about it. But questions and answer session is just asking about infant feeding. So if you've got questions about scans or visitors or anything else to do with your pregnancy, vaccinations, anything like that, please direct those questions to either your midwife or to the Ask the Midwife session, which is on a Monday. I think alternate Mondays, Wendy Randall does that, and she can answer the latest information. We are midwives, but we don't deal with all of the different aspects in the hospital because we're just infant feeding, so we don't want to give you the wrong answer. So it's anything to do with your baby's feeding, or if you're pregnant and you want to ask a question about impending births and things like that, it's about anything that you're worried about when you're pregnant. And if you're giving your babies bottles, we can talk about that. If you're talking about formula, we can also talk about that. So anything that's worrying you, and it doesn't matter how old your baby is, hopefully we can answer the questions. So if you're feeding your baby milk, then we'd be delighted to support you. So
Lots of people are coming up now.
yes, lovely, isn't
Hello.
it? Lovely to see you all, and hopefully you've got lots of brilliant questions for us again. So today we just thought we'd talk a little bit about how do you know your baby's getting enough, about volumes, and increasing volumes, because sadly some babies do come back into hospital with weight loss, and mums sometimes say they didn't realise they had to give more food, or they weren't giving quite enough, and they didn't realise that they couldn't tell that their baby was not getting enough food until they had the baby weighed. And it's not just sort of bashing anything, it's just talking about the simple basic things about it. So starting with tummy sizes and understanding that babies don't need masses and masses of food in the early days is the first start, that you don't override the need to feed your baby more. So if you're worried on day 0 that your baby's not feeding very often, we say 3 feeds in the first 24 hours, and a lot of mums and dads worry about that. They think their baby's not getting enough, so they feel they need to give the baby more food, and that might be with donor breast milk, or it might be with formula. And
it might even be express milk from
express
before,
milk,
which is good. We don't mind that.
Absolutely, but it's recognising the needs of your baby. So Alex is the prop goddess today. She's got some props for us. So
yeah, so we hold this one up almost every week. This is the size. You can't even do it in such a way you can see it. Of a baby's tummy. It is a very, very small marble. So sometimes we say it's the size of a cherry. In fact, this isn't even as big as a cherry.
We've got another little chart which shows that visually. It's the same. So that's the first sort of day is a cherry, and it's just tiny, small amounts. We don't really talk about volumes very much, do we? It's just sizes, so that you recognise that smallness, really, that the need to fill that small space, and it doesn't need to be filled. That's the other thing you need to say. It is there, but you don't have to fill it. What you don't really want to do is stretch it so it's bigger, because then it becomes the next size up, doesn't it?
So we're thinking about this is sort of around day 3. So the other one we use is our picture on there, which is a walnut.
So it's the size of a walnut. They're not big. Can you see? So by day 3, and that's maximum. You don't have to fill it the same things all over again, and it's just about recognising that the needs of the baby go up, but they're tiny, the amounts that the babies get. So with the size of the cherry, it might be that your baby just gets a tiny amount in the first, the first 24 hours. They may get in a 1 ml syringe, and some of you might be familiar with these because you've had babies, or you might be familiar because you're doing antenatal expressing and you're just trying to see, but 0.1 of a mil, which is the little notch there, is not an uncommon amount on day 0 and day 1, that's the sort of amount that you get out. It might be that much, half a mil, but it's going to start with little drops, and it's going to go up very gradually, and that that goes into your baby's tummy. It doesn't fill it, but your baby is getting its needs met when you do that. And it's like liquid gold. It's full of calories. It's, you know, really packed with lots of antiviral things, antibacterial, and probiotics and all of those things. It's got everything that your baby needs in those tiny, tiny drops. It's liquid gold.
And that impossible word, immunoglobulins.
Immunoglobulins, yeah. So it protects your baby from all the nasties that are out there, and they get all your stuff as well. They get all the things from you, your antibodies from you. So it's really good stuff for your baby, and it packs all the little gaps in the baby's bowel when it goes through, and it fills all the gaps up and protects your baby from pathogens, so bits and pieces that aren't very nice, and things that might create allergies. It will protect your baby from their blood system getting penetrated with those things that trigger the allergies. So it's really, really good stuff, but it's tiny, tiny amounts. Now, saying that, some women will produce lots and some women will only produce those amounts, and both of those are normal. And we don't know when you're breastfeeding how much your baby's getting in those early days. So it might be drops or it might be 15 mils. We don't know. So it's unusual to get 15 mils. Very, very unusual. It's nearly always 0.01 or drops. You just see tiny amounts. That's the norm. So we assume if your baby's suckling at the breast that they're doing okay and they're behaving normally, and they're being able to balance their blood sugar levels with their burning fat. They've got lots of reserves all over their body, around their neck, particularly the back of their neck. And if your baby's a normal, healthy term baby of a nice weight, it's not under the birth weight that we worry about, and it's not premature, it's going to be able to maintain its own blood sugar levels in the first 2 days. And so giving small amounts of food is priming your baby's gut to protect it, but your baby is what we call counter-regulating. It's actually providing enough brain food and enough food to keep the blood sugar levels okay while you're learning how to do it.
I was going to grab one of our dolls.
Yeah.
It
will enable your baby to just get used to being outside of the womb. It's adapting to being born. It's not about the food.
I was thinking about the counter-regulation. So when babies are born, they've got a nice little layer of fat that tends to run across the backs, and you see the gorgeous little chubby backs they have. And that's one of the places that they lay down this lovely brown adipose tissue that they access if the baby's not getting as much colostrum as perhaps the body needs. But it's not a problem, because the baby is geared up to be able to go between the two sources of food, and the baby doesn't mind whether it's going to come from colostrum or breaking down a little bit of its fat. So that's part of the normal process. So we know babies that are getting human milk will do this, and they will counter-regulate, as Naomi just said, and it keeps them healthy, and it allows for those few days before the milk comes in to have not big volumes. And most babies, as long as they're born at healthy and a healthy weight at term, will not be symptomatic of not getting huge amounts of colostrum in the first few days. So it's having faith and belief that it's all going to work.
And trust your body.
Yeah.
The most important thing that we ever say to anybody, if we're asked by staff on the ward or mums ring us up, is that you protect your milk supply, and you do skin to skin and you hand express. So if your baby is very sleepy and you're not able to attach, you do hand expressing and skin to skin, and that ensures that you give frequent small amounts of food to your baby for the colostrum, and so you're packing that through the baby's bowel and lining the baby's bowel. And then you just make sure that you do lots and lots and lots of stimulation, so when the baby needs to feed, the milk's ready and there for it. So we say 8 times in 24 hours to do lots of that stimulation of your prolactin receptors in your breast, and that's where your hand expressing comes in. If you pump at this stage, you just get these little tiny drops here, it just sticks to the funnel, so you can't collect it. So it's always better to use hand expressing and a small receptacle, so a spoon or a egg cup or a syringe or teaspoon. What else have we saying with me? Little pots.
Little pots.
Ice cube trays, that sort of thing. And that is the most appropriate way to collect colostrum until you've got larger volumes, maybe over about 10 mils. So keep going with it and trust your body. Trust that your baby is okay if it's a normal, healthy term baby. We know that babies that are normal and healthy don't tend to drop their blood sugar levels to dangerous levels if they're normal, healthy term babies and they're getting small amounts of colostrum in the early days. That's the first sort of 24 to 48 hours. If your baby's premature or very small, then that doesn't follow, or your baby's sick. If it's got a temperature, it's on antibiotics, then you need to feed it more frequently because it doesn't have the reserves that a normal healthy term baby has. So, we say just keep going, and we'll say to you, hand express and do skin to skin, give your baby small amounts all the time, and you'll start to prime your receptors and put the order in for when your baby's needing milk, and that will be after 48 hours. You'll start to see that your breasts change and they get more veiny, they get a bit warmer and then a bit firmer, and then you feel like there's something there, and that's lots of blood going to your breasts. And then after about 3 days you'll start to see the milk change, and it will start to be more sort of whitey yellow rather than sort of golden see-through yellow. And then as it becomes mature milk after about day 3 or 4, then it becomes much more translucent white. Sometimes it's a bit greeny, sometimes it's a bit yellow, sometimes it's a bit blue, and that's all normal. But it looks much more watery, and a lot of people worry that it's not good enough, but it's absolutely fantastic stuff, and it's full of fats, it's full of all the things that the colostrum's got, and it's full of calories as well.
The reason it doesn't look like the milk that we're used to drinking in the UK, cow's milk, is that it doesn't have the same casein quantities. It's made up with different proteins. All milk is, whether it's cows or human, it's casein and whey. And casein reflects the light, so it makes it look really white. So our milk doesn't have as much casein, and therefore it doesn't look as white. So that's why our milk doesn't look as white, and it can go from sort of a bluey tinge through to a greeny tinge to sort of almost grey, and not look as maybe what people would perceive as appetising, but it is absolutely perfect, bespoke and tailor-made for your baby, just what your baby needs.
So it's got lots of calories in it, and it's also got lots of sugars. A lot of it is lactose as well. So your baby gets lots and lots of lactose in milk, and that's the one that puts on lots of calories because it's very sugary. So
it's very important for the brain.
Grows brains, yeah.
As well as being responsive to your baby, cuddling your baby, talking to your baby. We talk about this every time, how important responsive feeding is, and being responsive to your baby generally.
Yeah, and so, it's recognising all those things as normal. And the other thing that, you don't need to do is give your baby extra food in the first few days, which is a concern when babies don't appear to be feeding very well. So they may not be feeding more than 3 times in the first 24 hours. And you may worry as a mother about that. So the most important thing that you do if you're worried is you hand express. If your baby's very sleepy, you may have had an epidural, you may have had some injection for pain relief, and you may have had an anaesthetic for a cesarean, and that will make your baby quite sleepy for a few days. And so your baby might not wake up. Doing skin to skin will be the first thing that you do, so that your baby is primed to go to the breast, because that's where they expect to be. And then the next thing is that you frequently stimulate your breasts yourself. So if your baby's not waking up at this point, then you can do lots and lots and lots and lots of hand expressing. So it might be every couple of hours you hand express in that 24-hour period, so that you're really, really priming the receptors in your breast, and that you're working really hard around here, around all the prolactin receptors. It's the ones that make the hormone that send messages to the brain, that stimulate the brain to then say, I need to make milk, this is how much my baby needs, and it secures your supply. So if you just say, oh well, it's fine, my baby doesn't need to feed more than 3 times in 24 hours, that's absolutely fine, your baby's fine, and you will produce milk, but you'll secure it much more if you do frequent stimulations. But you'll also make yourself more confident, because you'll have lots and lots of bits of colostrum that you can be just popping in your baby's mouth, collecting and giving, and you know that your baby's getting frequent small amounts of colostrum, which will just maintain your baby's well-being. You don't have to do it if the baby's well. We say that 3 feeds in 24 hours is fine, but securing your milk supply is really, really important.
Qualify that, first 24 hours.
First 24 hours, yes, sorry, missed the first bit out, that's quite significant. So that you really start the process of milk production very early, so that when your baby starts on the 2nd night, which is the night they always grow horns, we talk about this a lot, and it wakes up at 8 o'clock in the evening and is awake all night. It's usually the night you go home, and you get home and you think, well, I haven't got anything for the baby and it's starving. And some babies cry a lot in the first, they ask for milk, they feel hungry, really hungry, much more than other babies. And it's normally always on a norm, that line is very varied between babies. And as long as everything is normal in your baby had no problems at birth, that it's not on antibiotics, that you've gone home and your baby's got good fat reserves and is waking up to feed, then that's normal. You shouldn't need to give your baby anything extra to secure the fact that they're not happy. They are telling you they want food, but they're chasing the milk. And so skin to skin, hand expressing, offering the breast, getting a positioning and attachment is really important. And you're not filling that little cherry size up or that walnut size up, but you're giving drops to your baby, and they're just waiting for the milk to come. So the more you take off, the more you're going to make. If you interrupt that by giving other sort of foods, then you're going to interrupt that feeding, and you're also going to stretch that baby's tummy. So if you give your baby a bottle of, say, 30 mils or 20 mils of donor breast milk or formula, at that stage your baby's tummy is going to get much bigger. It's going to be this size, which is
an apricot.
Larger marble, isn't it? Have you got it on your lap?
I've got them on my lap, yeah.
It's going to get much bigger, and then what you're going to find is that you're at this stage with your baby, maybe cherry or walnut size, but your baby's tummy is stretched to this or this, and that's much later down the line when the milk's in. So if you have to then go back to expressing your little amounts again, and you've got that bigger space to fill, it's going to notice. So you're going to make more work for yourself if you do that, and it will make your baby want to feed more if you haven't quite got it. And that's the start of your supplementing your baby, and that you don't feel secure in the amount that you're giving. So babies just need small amounts frequently in the early days, so the first 24 to 48 hours, and then your breasts start to produce milk naturally, and then they start to give your baby what it needs. There's a reason why they don't get that food in the early days, because they don't need it. They're getting packs of the colostrum, which is lining the gut, and your baby's gut has got meconium from the bottom of the tummy all the way down to its back passage. So it goes all the way down, and the colostrum goes behind the meconium and pushes it out like a laxative. And as it pushes the meconium out, the black poo, it lines all those pockets in your baby's gut to protect it, and it makes the baby empty its tummy and protects it as it's going. And then when the baby has pooed all of that poo out, which it does, as you probably all know if you've had babies in the early days, they do lots of those black sticky poos, then it's ready to receive the milk. And strangely enough, that starts to be produced after about 48 hours on a mum, and then it's ready to have the milk. There's a reason for it. The body is physiologically preparing to start taking in more food, but that's not until a little bit further down the line. So by day 7, your baby will start to increase its volumes and to get more milk. And then if you do go home on day 1 with syringes and you're not able to attach your baby, we would expect the volumes that you give your baby each feed go up. So you're not going to be giving 0.1 of a mil, you're not going to be giving a little notch like that on day 2. You need to increase the volumes, you need to be starting to get more colostrum out, and your body will start to produce more colostrum, and then it will start to have that transitional milk, which is slightly more volumes, and they will go up. So, by the end of the day, on day 24 hours, you might find that you're getting half a mil, and then you might start getting a mil, and then you start to get 5 mils, and then by day 3, you're probably getting about 10 to 15 mils out. So it goes up every day, and you have to make that decision as parents to increase that volume. And if you can't, because it's not happening, you need to be talking to somebody. And so if your baby's not pooing, that's the sign that they haven't had lots of colostrum that empties their gut. They're not getting lots of food to push things through. You need to be talking to your midwife, because it might be that there's not enough going in. And that's where you can stop problems from happening, because you are alerted to it early. So this is where we're talking about volumes. We're not giving you a specific amount, but you've got to look at all the signs. So is your baby feeding 8 times in 24 hours, after about 24 hours to 36 hours? Probably 36 hours it will up the feeds, maybe 6 times, and then by 48 hours it certainly should be having 8 feeds in 24 hours, but the volumes should be going up. You should hear your baby swallowing more at the breast, and it will be feeding more frequently, and you'll see more wet and dirty nappies. And so you'll find that you get about 3 wet nappies on day 3, 2 on day 2, and 1 on day 1. And they're not particularly heavy, but you'll see wee. And that you'll see meconium, and you'll see meconium every day until it starts changing. At the end of sort of 24 hours, it'll start to get slightly different colour and less sticky, and then after 48 hours, you'll see it becoming sort of more browny green, and then it'll be sort of green, and then by day 3, end of day 3 to day 4, it should be starting to change to yellow. And if you're not seeing those changes, you should be contacting your community midwife and asking them, saying, my baby has not pooed very much, the poo is still very black, I haven't seen many wees. You need to talk to somebody, don't wait till day 5, it's on you to call us, because we're not with you, we don't know these things, so if we don't hear from you, we assume that you're okay. This is where babies start to lose weight.
I'm just giggling because I'm just thinking, if the one thing you take away from this is, if the poo is not yellow on day 4, phone your midwife.
Yeah, or if there isn't any poo.
Yes, no poo or it's not yellow on day 4.
The milk should be getting through and it should be changing
and start expressing
colour.
if you're not doing it already.
And the volumes are going up, you're giving your baby more food. So if your baby's not doing those things, it needs more food. That's what it's telling you, it's not quite getting enough. So you should be talking to somebody and asking for help. That might be that your community midwife is the first port of call that you will go to at that stage. And then the local other support services are around as well, but they're very busy like everybody else, so they can't see everybody, and they do as much as they can, but your community midwife is the first person that you would call. And then the local support services, so your baby cafe in Abingdon, OBS or La Leche League, they can do some telephone support, and also we can see you in our clinics after about a week if things are not going to plan. But your community midwife is the person that you go to for your support first. If they are worried, they will contact us and we will advise them, or we will suggest that we see you. But you can also refer yourself, and you don't have to wait to be referred by somebody. So if you're worried, you can call us and ask us questions, and we will advise you as to where you go from there. If we think we need to see you, then we'll say so. So community midwife first, but don't sit and wait till day 5, because that's like putting the sandbags out after the tsunami. You've got to do it before that. And you've got to stop everything from happening, so you don't go down that path of having to come back into hospital because your baby's lost too much weight. And if you're really proactive and you're looking at those vital signs that your baby's suckling and swallowing, it's peeing and pooing, those 3 things will tell you that your baby is probably going to have gained enough weight or not lost too much weight at the point in which it's weighed. So it's, it is about recognising that there's change and to understand that. And also in your care plan when you go home, it's got advice in it that will support you, and it's got all the telephone numbers that you need on the front, and your community midwife, and then this is the reliable signs that we've just been talking about, and there's a checklist for when your baby's up to 72 hours and when your baby's over 72 hours. It's also got a little box in it that you can tick that will tell you when your baby's weed and pooed. So that's also very important. You can fill that in and you can see what your baby's doing and count them.
Further over.
You can see and you can count the number of wees and
it'll be
poos
back to
that
front,
are
but you'll recognise the colours.
It says congratulations on the birth of your baby. That's the giveaway that it's for you. So don't be worried about ringing people. You're not going to bother anyone, and you're not going to make a fuss about anything. We want to know. And we want you to know that you've got to increase the volumes, and we want you to know that the baby needs to poo and pee appropriately for its age. So you've got to be looking every day at what your baby's doing and ask somebody if you're not sure. Think about those tummy volumes. Think about whether your baby needs extra food in the early days. It may not. It just may be that you're not confident and you think your baby's crying because it's hungry. It's chasing the milk. It's asking the milk to be made. So the more it feeds, the more milk you'll make. And that's really important, partly because you need to get your positioning right, so you can do that so that you don't get sore, but also that you secure your milk supply for later. Have I said enough?
Yeah,
You have
that was quite
twitching.
impressive.
She's
That was
twitching.
very impressive.
There's lots of questions coming in, I can tell.
Well, there are some. The first one, I'm afraid, is Ella Rose, and I think she may have missed the beginning because she's asked when birth partners are allowed to come. I'm afraid we're not the forum. Ella Rose, if you wouldn't mind waiting for Wendy Randall's sessions, which are every other week, or contacting your own midwives, but we don't as yet know. We've not heard anyone. Birth partners have always been allowed to come in
for the birth.
So that they've never stopped. This time last year, birth partners were coming. We've never ever stopped women having their birth partners with them. But it's afterwards, it's the visiting that's been more limited, and that's now started up again. So
have a look on the website as well.
Yeah, just have a look.
University Hospital's website, because
So,
they put posts up on their latest things.
Yeah, and the other place is look at the YouTube for these videos, these Facebook Lives, because Wendy Randall's latest one will be up there too, and it may have been covered on that one, so good luck with that one. Elsa said, when is a good time to start colostrum harvesting? Would like to do it for my second baby. So we tend to say not before 37 weeks. You want to practice at 36, but don't do it before 37. And having scanned down the other questions, I know there's links in with Francis, who was saying, thank you for this, it's really informative, she's learning a lot. You might like to know that, Naomi, after that amazing soliloquy.
My ramblings.
You did nearly half an hour, it's impressive.
Oh, have I really?
Yes, you have.
Oh, good.
Francis also said, and I will come back to the other questions because I haven't skipped them, I promise, but it fits. She said she missed the start of this. Is it important to express colostrum antenatally? No, it's not. You don't have to. If you want to learn the new skill before you have a baby, then by all means learn how to do it. And there's some great resources out there. You could look at global health media videos. You could look at the UNICEF Baby Friendly Initiative. They have a lovely video as well showing hand expressing. Any of those. And in fact, we've got some videos going up.
We've got one up
We've
now,
got one.
I
don't think it'll be up till next week, but we've got one going up. And we've got a leaflet on our page, if you look under our resources about collecting colostrum when you're pregnant. But there's no obligation on you to do it. It's only, we recommend it for women who know they may encounter problems. So someone who's got diabetes, we would highly recommend they do it because their babies may struggle to maintain their blood sugar levels, and the first thing we would want to give as an additional food post would be colostrum. So that would be, our mothers with diabetes would highly recommend doing it. A mother who knows she's going to have a small for gestational age baby, or maybe a baby that's not been growing as great as we would hope, or if you know that you're going to be induced the next day and you're going to have a premature baby. So those are the sort of risk factors we'd be looking at. We think, okay, it would be worth you doing it. Other people just do it because they want to, they want that buffer.
Learn a skill.
And it's good to learn a new skill before you've had the baby. Just have a go, even if you just do it in the shower, but learn how to do it. But the thing to remember is, Naomi's just talked about how important it is to establish your milk supply. If you've got loads of colostrum you've collected before you've had your baby, do not sit back and think that's fine, I can give my colostrum, I don't have to do anything. You do. Because your body doesn't know. Your body doesn't know that that baby's arrived unless you're feeding it or you're expressing or doing a bit of both. So anyone who's expressed prior to having the baby, you need to be on it still. You still need to be feeding, you still need to be expressing, or you will not have a milk supply, even if you had tons and tons of colostrum before you had the baby. Because that's when you make the influence on your milk supply. So that's the 2 colostrum harvesting ones. Emma has said she's 32 weeks pregnant and hasn't noticed a change in her breast at all. Is it normal? Should I expect changes before birth? Or could my milk come in normally after birth without any noticeable changes?
Everybody's different, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they are,
I mean,
yeah.
did you find that your breast got a little bit bigger when you were in the first sort of couple of months of pregnancy? Before you almost knew you were pregnant, did your breast get a bit tender? Because that's often when most people feel the changes in their breast. They don't tend to see their breast grow much when they've gone past that. Until maybe about 36 weeks, you tend to find that your breasts start to prepare a little bit, but not everybody does. And it doesn't always mean that you're not going to produce milk because you haven't had changes in your breast. So I think you just have to trust that you're going to make milk as a mother, and some mums unfortunately don't, and we don't know why, but we assume that most mothers will make milk and they will have enough to feed their babies. Sometimes you don't have enough because you don't do all the things that we've talked about this morning, which is the lots of stimulation, lots of skin to skin, in the early days, and that first 24 to 48 hours is crucial in your milk production, and that is often the reason why you don't produce milk, not that your breasts haven't grown. So I think that give yourself the best chance to make milk by doing all the things that you need to do, and then you can assess whether actually your breasts are going to produce enough milk. But we assume that every mum will make enough milk until they don't, and that's most mothers. You know, we assume that you will.
It's being proactive as well. So you know, if your baby comes and you're struggling to hand express, you know, make sure you get plenty of support. On occasions we might, I know we've talked about not putting people on a pump early, but sometimes we might use a pump for a bit of extra stimulation. When women are doing really well with the hand, we wouldn't use a pump because you tend to lose all the colostrum into the pump, as Naomi's already mentioned. But if you have a risk factor, then we might say, okay, let's do a bit of hand and a bit of pump and a bit of hand and do a bit of mixture, and really tell the breast that baby's arrived, and really just literally belt and braces, turning everything on. So
if you had a baby in the neonatal unit, you might find that you were doing hands-on pumping, so you were using a pump on day 0 and really stimulating, because if your baby's very early, your breast development is much less than somebody who's got a 40-week baby. If you've had your baby at 26 weeks, your breast development is going to be less than somebody who's gone to term. So you have to work really, really hard to produce that milk early on, and that includes doing some pumping as well as hand expressing, but only in those circumstances would we normally say that in the early days. It's much more effective to hand express in normal times.
So I think for you, Emma, I mean, you're 32 weeks already, which is lovely. So, but maybe, you know, have a think back to the beginning, as Naomi's just mentioned. You know, I mean, we're not looking for big changes. We're looking for literally maybe a bit bigger, a bit more tender.
The nipples often are very tender.
Yeah. And that maybe would be worth you learning how to hand express before you've had your baby. Have a go, just so that you're on the, you know, if you're ahead of the game really.
About 4 weeks, 5 weeks time, you can start doing it.
So see how you get on. Lou has said her 13-day-old had a tongue tie cut yesterday. She's now feeding constantly for 2 to 3 hours at a time, 1 hour minimum. Is this something I should be worried about?
We know feeding is good physio, that's what we'd say.
And we know that they're very upset after they've had a tongue tie. It's not nothing what they have done.
And they get very tired, so they can't take large volumes in the early days. So, you know, today, tomorrow, they'll probably feed a lot, and then you might find that it becomes a bit chaotic in 48 hours, where they suddenly lose the muscles that they've been using, and then the new muscles have kicked in, and it's, you know, it's like running a race. You know, if you've never done it, it's hard, and the muscles have not been used before. They get very tired, so they feed little and often, and then gradually their tongue function improves. The good feeding you're doing is good physio for that tongue, and then it starts to settle. But it's 2 to 4 weeks with a tongue tie being snipped. It's not the next day. It's often chaotic for a little while, and then it starts to get better, and you start to see that your baby feeds for longer, you're less sore, and your milk production might go up if that's been the problem. But talk to somebody if you're still worried.
Okay, Claire has said, if you need to keep stimulating your breasts, when would you actually give the baby the colostrum that you've harvested? Shouldn't you be putting baby to breast instead of giving previously harvested from the syringe? Sorry if it's a silly question.
Great question.
No, it's not. I mean, it is a great question. Don't worry about it. It's not silly at all. And I totally get what you mean. But actually, in those early days, yes, you'd be able to put the baby to the breast, and yes, you can give them the colostrum as well. You know, it's all great. The more food we can get in babies at that stage, the less likely they are to be jaundiced, the less likely they are they're going to lose weight. So if you are doing well, just give it to the baby. Yeah.
And it might be that all the things that we said really early on in this session, that your baby's very sleepy in the early days because you've had an instrumental delivery or long labour, or you've had drugs that make you sleepy. They'll make your baby sleepy, and if you're tired, your baby will be tired, and they don't often wake up because they're tired too, and they're a little bit medicated. And that's when giving the colostrum is really helpful, if your baby's not actually asking to be fed frequently. And as we said, 3 feeds in the first 24 hours is perfectly fine if your baby's normal and healthy. And anything else you can give your baby as well. And that's great, that pushes everything through and wakes your baby up and gives them lots of calories. So, you know, it's a win-win.
Yeah. So not a silly question. I'm sure other people were thinking it too.
Yes, because we were directing it about hand expressing and giving volumes, but you know, feed and give it. And Hand Express.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose out doing
I think
that.
we've got a thumbs up for that one. It's just come up the screen.
We're all for that.
Charlotte has come on with her
Hello.
lovely baby Alicia. She's out walking around. She's in the
Oh.
countryside having a nice walk. Hopes we're both okay, and she's got more teeth coming, and she's going to be 11 months in 5 days. Charlotte is one of our regular listeners, almost right since the beginning, I think.
It's been a tough year, hasn't it, for you all?
Frances, we've already covered her 2 questions because they worked earlier. That was perfect. Eleanor has said her baby's 3 weeks today. I'd like to donate my breast milk when I can. Who should I contact? Thanks. Amanda Wood. You're going to contact Amanda Wood. And Eleanor, that's fantastic.
If for women, from women.
Yeah, it's so lovely. You can go on the website, the hospital website, look at the Human Milk Bank, and there'll be all the paperwork on there, because there is some paperwork. And you'll need to have a blood test, which your GP should be quite prepared to do, because you're going to be donating to the milk bank. And it's just the same bloods you had done at the beginning of your pregnancy. It's the same screening. And then there's some paperwork and contact, and the contact is Amanda Wood. So her email and contact details will be on the website. But she'll be delighted to hear from you, Eleanor. It's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Make sure you've got enough for you before you give it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's early days, so if you've got loads, that's lovely, but
Yeah.
don't miss out on it.
Yeah, we have been so lucky over the last year here at the here in John Radcliffe with our Human Milk Bank. Many mothers have benefited from that milk over the last year, because we've just had quite a lot more than we've had previously, allowing us to make it readily available on the wards to our mothers who maybe are struggling to get their milk supply up, and there may be a bit of a delay. And we've even been lucky enough to send the odd mother home with it whilst she builds her supply up. So yeah, we're so eternally grateful to
It's not somewhere that happens in hospitals in the country.
No,
we're very, very, very lucky that we're routinely offering mothers stolen breast milk on the postnatal ward if their babies aren't
very
getting enough.
unusual. Yeah.
So most places will give formula as the go-to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for them, they feel sad, but we're just in such an amazing position in this hospital that it's something that is routinely given to mums to protect exclusivity, if that's what they want to do. So we're very, very lucky, and so and frequently say to mums, that somebody sat and pumped with love to give you that gift, and it's precious.
It is very.
Yeah. So thank you.
Emma has said, thank you, definitely learning how to trust my body throughout this pregnancy. Listening to your advice is super helpful. I'm glad, Emma. Thank you very much.
That's what it is all about,
Yeah.
is trusting your bodies, trusting yourself as a woman. We're made to have babies, we're made to breastfeed. Trust your body, and mostly it will take care of you.
Right, Jennifer has said, hi Alex and Naomi, these sessions are great, thank you. Do you have any advice regarding constipation in my just turned 7-month-old baby boy who is getting constipated sometimes? Still exclusively breastfed on demand, frequently day and night, as have done since birth. Started weaning at 6 months old, once a day and then twice a day. After a couple of weeks, mainly purees and some baby lid. Mainly fruit and veg, including prunes, and has sips of water in a free flow cup. Had no issues with constipation, still started weaning. Thanks so much. Now this is when, if you had expressed colostrum and hadn't used it, you'd be able to give it and it would be perfect, because it's a laxative. And you wouldn't have to rely on anything else.
I think probably there's a lot of changes going on in the gut with with the weaning, but are you offering a breastfeed before you give the food? So that's the first thing we say.
Keep those fluids up.
Food before one is for fun, and it's not their primary source of nutrition. The breast milk is your baby's source of nutrition until they're over 1. So always breastfeed first, so that they get the breast milk first, and then anything else after that is a bonus. So they're just learning about textures and tastes at this point and feeling different things in their mouths. So it might be that they've got reduced fluids if you're not doing that first, that they're filling up on food that you're giving outside of breast milk, and that might be that they've dropped their fluid intake, and that might be all it is. So offer breast milk first, give a breastfeed first, and then offer small amounts of food, purees, all the things that you're doing, fruit and vegetables. And you shouldn't need to give your baby any other fluids. Your breast milk should be perfectly fine. But it could just be that the change in your baby's gut is just making him a little bit constipated. But always give breast milk first, and then think about the foods after that. Hope that helps, and that it will help your baby That's the most important thing.
So that was for Jennifer. Hopefully that helps. Ellen has come back and said she's got plenty for her baby boy and he's growing really well. And thanks for the information. So that's fantastic. Brilliant news.
Lovely.
Sharon has sent us a happy Easter. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Sharon.
She's one of our colleagues. Rosie has said, hello, could you say a bit about the decision to make a tongue tie snip? My 3-week-old has 70% tie and I'm unsure whether to wait 3 weeks for ENT referral and keep working on attachment or get it done privately sooner. I'm on antibiotics for mastitis and they seem to give the baby diarrhea, and your colleague said things could get worse at 6 weeks as the mouth grows in a way I want to get it done, but I'm having a wobble.
Well, the only people that can make decisions are you as a family, really, and I think that it's got to be right for you. Are things getting worse or are they the same? Are you managing what you've got? And how do you feel about all of it? Taking it forward, how does your partner feel? I think those things are the important things that you need to do. We can't tell you what to do, but we've given you the information. You could look at information on tongue ties, so Association of Tongue Tie Practitioners, and that might help. I'm going to have a choking fit.
But it's also, I don't want to get you, stop your flow, go for it, I'm going to fill in for you.
No, you fill in, that's absolutely fine.
And I bet it's also thinking about, if things are improving without having it done, because it's considering that it is invasive, it is a pair of scissors in a baby's mouth.
Surgical procedure.
And I think as much as possible, if you can get things improved with good positioning and attachment, and not need to have it done, that's all the better if you can, really. And obviously for some it is needed to be done. I don't think you saw either of us specifically, I don't know, but difficult. A bit like on the TV, isn't it? Can't talk about the specific case because we don't know the details.
It's very difficult because we really don't tell you what you should be doing. We can just give you the information and you've got to sort it out.
Yeah.
And it's can you keep breastfeeding happily up until that time? It might get more complicated, it might not. We don't know until it happens. It might make a huge difference. You might not see a massive change. That's the thing with having it done. It does not a guarantee that anything's going to get better. We assume it will help, and that's why we don't send everybody to have their baby's tongue tie snipped. I think that's more important than anything else, is that a lot of babies do work it out themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes waiting gives you a chance to think, actually, I don't need it doing, and I'm going to cough again.
It is one of those things that it's so difficult because it's got to be tailor-made for you, that decision, and it depends on whether you're coping. I mean, I don't know if this is what's a contributing factor to you getting mastitis, and obviously if you were going to get recurrent mastitis, that would be a very good reason to go and have it done. The reasons that we normally do think that it was worth doing it is if you've got a baby that's not attaching. You've got a baby that's not gaining, or you've got a mother that's in pain, would be the main reasons that we'd be saying it's worth doing it. It's not worth doing it if everything else is going well, if the baby is gaining, feeding, mum's okay. Not because we just don't recommend it just because you can see something there.
It might make it worse.
And
we don't know.
That's always the risk.
If it's worse and you have it done, it generally doesn't make it worse, but if it is all okay, sometimes it throws the baby and they do not feed as well afterwards. So, it's not a magic wand ever, and we can't guarantee that it will make a difference. And that's the difficult thing about it, and that there's a lot of pressure to have the tongue tie snipped. It's very very common for people to, most women know somebody who's had a baby that's had a tongue tie cut. And actually you can work through quite a lot of the problems, and the baby can work it out themselves. And if you've got enough milk and you can resolve your soreness by getting positioning better, sometimes that's all you need to do, and it maximises the tongue function. Good feeding is good physio.
So Rosie, I think, I'm assuming you've seen us because you've been referred to ENT, as you said on here. I mean, if you want to give us a shout, we're working over the next couple of days. I'm in tomorrow and Naomi's working Saturday. Give us a shout, we can put your notes and have a look.
Yeah.
And have a chat with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on. Sharon has said, looking well, ladies. These mums are lucky to have you. They're lucky to have you too, Sharon.
They do.
Cotswolds.
You've helped us out so much.
Laurie Betty has said, hi ladies, thank you so much for the dedication you showed through these live sessions. We actually enjoyed them, Laurie Betty. We're very
I
lucky.
think we're almost on a year now, isn't it?
21st of May. Of April, sorry. 21st of April was the first
one.
one.
2 or 3 weeks' time, we'll be
we'll
a whole year
We'll
down.
have a little banner.
Have to look how many people have watched. It's thousands and thousands of you. It's
I think
fabulous.
the first ones were you and Hannah, weren't they?
Yeah.
So just luck of the draw who worked on that day, but we work clinic today, so we end up doing
we love doing it.
Yeah. Laurie Betty said, my baby had a tongue tie snipped at 2 weeks privately. I opted for that because I was in terrible pain. Baby wasn't attaching properly and was gulping air, had cramps. After the snip, all sorted. I'm glad I had it done privately and I nipped it in the bud. Yeah, so that's a good
That
story.
helps you.
Yeah, exactly. And you've said you've picked up what we were talking about, that you were in terrible pain. And the baby wasn't attaching properly. So those are the reasons. Those are the reasons for doing that. Yeah.
But not just in case, because it's not appropriate. If everything is okay, but you just think, oh, somebody's told me my baby's got a tongue tie, then it's not appropriate to get it cut in the early days.
And Laurie Betty put more. She said her baby's 3 months now, little snotty and not so keen. Oops, it's skipped down again. Not so keen on feeding today. Should you worry? No. It's like you, when you don't feel so good, you don't always want to feed.
Might have got earache or something.
Yeah, just keep offering.
Has anyone got snuffles in the house?
She said baby's snotty.
Snotty, okay. Yeah, somebody else has got a cold though. If you've got another baby with a cold or something.
Just keep going. Keep popping baby's breast, little and often probably at this stage. Especially if you think about it, babies are what they call obligate nose breathers. So when their nose is blocked, they get a bit stressed because they don't really breathe through their mouths brilliantly well, so they haven't quite worked that one out. So small, short feeds probably what your baby will be happy doing, and then hopefully they'll feel better soon. And remember that if that bug's in your house, if someone's got a cold, you're already producing those antibodies and you're protecting that baby already. So your baby's lucky.
Miserable though.
Yeah, not much fun.
And actually, breastfeeding does open the nasal passages, even if they're a bit bunged up. And also because it's not cow's milk, cow's milk makes babies much more snotty than breast milk, so they're much less likely to be snotty and get ear infections if they have breast milk. So that's really helpful. So you're doing a good job.
Rosie has come back and said she saw Elisa, it was really helpful, and she's just indecisive. Thank you. I know it's a really hard decision to make. It's not something that anyone should do lightly. You need to have a good reason to be doing it. But if you want to chat it through, I say between us what we're in tomorrow and Saturday. So if you ring, we'll have a chat.
It's a big step because it's a very deliberate act on your baby, isn't it?
Yeah.
To have it snipped, and that's a big step for most parents to go through.
Totally get that.
But stick with your decision, whatever it is.
Laurie Betty's come back and said thank you, and at the moment that's all there is. Last week I got to sort of within a few minutes of the end, and then there was a flurry of questions that all came flying in.
So we can talk a little bit more about the reliable signs of knowing your baby's had enough, and these are things we did talk about peas, and knowing if your baby's had enough pee. That's the most important thing. You can look at in your baby's nappy. You can put a tablespoon of water in your baby's nappy on the first few days, and that will tell you how much your baby should be peeing, about what it should feel like. And as your milk comes in, then put a couple of tablespoons in your baby's nappy and then feel how heavy it is, and that will tell you pretty much what your baby should be peeing. So day 5, it should probably do about 2 tablespoons time a day in 24 hours. And you should see frequent, and it shouldn't smell or be concentrated, have anything in it, any blood or little bits of orange crystals, which we call urates. Your baby shouldn't have any of those. So that's a good sure sign. And the suckling and swallowing, so hearing your baby have that lovely as it's suckling, so it might be every suckle or every other suckle you hear that baby swallowing, and you see lots of movement in the jaw, the ears are wiggling, cheeks are big and full, and your baby's engaged with you. It's got its eyes open when it starts feeding. It's getting milk, and as the flow comes, they get their eyes open with the milk, and then as they get more sleepy in the feed, they tend to shut their eyes and feed with their eyes shut. But if you get another letdown, you might suddenly hear the baby glugging again, and its eyes will open again, and you will recognise that. And actually, you get lots of letdowns in a breastfeed. You don't just get one. So a letdown is where the hormones release the milk to your baby, and it's delivered by hormones. So it's, as you stimulate, your baby then starts to get the milk, and then suddenly they start to glug, and that's where you've had your letdown, and then they get less and less and less, and then suddenly there's another letdown, and you hear them glugging, and you think they've just finished, and you think, oh, right, we're finished now, we can go shopping, whatever. That was in the old days. We can't do that anymore, can we?
Soon.
And then suddenly it starts to glug again, and you think, oh, he hasn't finished, is he ever going to finish? You know, but then you have another letdown, and that's where they're gaining their calories from. So that's really good feeding, suckling and swallowing, and you're looking for that, you know. So if your baby's not doing much of that, and the nappies aren't very prolific, so you're not getting lots of yellowy poos after day 4 or 5, you know, you need to look at how much food your baby's getting, and are they on the breast deeply enough, because we talk about that endlessly in other sessions as well, that actually a really big mouthful of breast is a sure sign that your baby's transferring milk and getting milk and making the next feed, which is what you're looking for. And then the last one is weight, and your baby should be gaining regular amounts, so 20 to 30 grams, depending on whether it's a boy or a girl, until it's about 4 months old. So, you know, it should be going up, not massively, but you should see the curve on your baby, in your baby's red book, be followed or go above, but it shouldn't be dropping down with them. Once it's got onto its curve, it should stay there.
Yeah.
You know, if your baby was really big, it doesn't necessarily follow that curve after you've had the baby. It might drop a couple of curves and then go on a smaller curve. And the same if your baby was born very small, it may go up centiles, it may go up the curves a few, and start growing better, particularly if you've had placental problems, and then suddenly your baby gets more calories when it's born, it then starts to gain more weight. So, you know, one size doesn't fit all, and your baby does what it does for itself, you know, trust your body with that feeding, and just make sure you increase volumes and things so that your baby gets consistently more increase in volumes per day when you're feeding.
And then the point to make is also with breast milk, because we couldn't continue as women to make more and more and more milk. It actually gets to about 4 weeks or so, and the volume of milk you produce does not change. In fact, soon after 2 weeks, it really doesn't change. That's why we talked to you about establishing your milk supply in the first 2 weeks and laying the foundations and really, really securing it. After that, the volume that you produce, and on average most women will produce 750 mils, it doesn't change. And it carries on being that volume, whether it's sort of 600 to a litre, you know, in that region. And women who are producing for 2 will produce even more. That doesn't change until you're bringing them off, you know, breast milk, and they may be having more complementary foods, or you're at 1 and you're introducing maybe other fluids. So because the volume doesn't change, it's the ingredients in the milk that changes. And I think we've mentioned this before, it gets very confusing for mothers who may be doing mixed feeding, because they see that the baby needs increased amounts of volume of formula, and that's because it's a finite amount of ingredients, calories in a finite amount of liquid in the formula, whereas your breast milk is really clever, and it carries on changing to meet the baby's needs within the same volume. The volume doesn't change, but the constituents change to meet your baby's growing requirements.
So the composition of fat changes, doesn't it?
And all the enzymes, you get enzymes that appear later because they're going on to other foods, and you know, hormones, etc. They're all constantly changing because the body knows when the baby was born and how old the baby is now. So it's amazing. Tailor-made for human babies. So lovely video. Look it up on YouTube. So, that's us, I think. There's no more comments.
Oh, that's
good. We finish early today.
We are. Normally we talk for hours and hours.
I know. Often we finish late.
I could have rambled for even longer, couldn't I? But I think, you know, just know where you can get support. That's the most important thing. So use your local support to you first. So your community midwife or your health visitor is an ideal source of support, and then you can go out to the charities that are around in the county. So the Abingdon Baby Cafe or the Oxfordshire Breastfeeding support, but actually they're not open next week. They're having a very, 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 very well deserved rest next week over the Easter break. So they're not around, but we are, as always. And your midwives and your health visitors are also around. So do use us if you need to, and you can contact us by email, or by telephone, and you can self-refer. You don't need to be referred by a midwife or your health visitor. You can self-refer if you want to. You don't need to have that invitation.
And sometimes we might just do it on a video call, Last week I was chatting to her mum and she was telling me what was happening, so we swapped to a video call and I watched what she was doing. It was only 10 minutes, it saved her coming in, and made a few suggestions, and off she went. I've not heard any more, so I'm hoping it was all right. So you know, sometimes we can do that too. So I think we're going to say thank you and goodbye. And
Save all your
happy
questions
Easter.
up for next week. And
Enjoy your chocolates.
hope it doesn't snow.
Oh yeah.
We've been spoiled.
Typical, isn't it? Gorgeous day on Monday and Tuesday.
Schools
Or
break
Tuesday,
up.
Wednesday, yeah. Yeah, now it's going to be cold and all
It'll
the
come.
blossom will go. So all the best to all of you. Happy feeding. So,
Yeah. Have
Okay.
a good week. See you next Thursday.
bye.
Bye.